Hello, whiskey freaks. Welcome back to the Beastmasters Club podcast. I am Ben Triple Matured Paluba.
And I'm Steve, the Smoky Beast Zeller, and we're here at Xavier Wines in the Meatpacking District in New York with the owner, Jim Big Liver Parisi. And Jim, I know that Xavier Wines kind of specializes in natural wine and biodynamic wine. Tell us, what does that mean?
Basically, a natural wine is a wine that's made with as little influence from the winemaker as possible. Honestly, it's grapes, yeast, barrel, and bottle, and that's it. And that's the way it comes to you. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but it's really as little influence as possible. And I just think that's the way wine should be made. It's the way wine's been made for centuries. And here we have a curated store, and that's what I do best. We curate wines and spirits for everybody, so we build it to everyone's taste.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for having us. Today we are going to play you our first event, which features Joe Beatrice, the president and founder of Barrell Bourbon. And Joe tasted us through 5 whiskeys, his American Whiskey Batch 2 and his Barrell Bourbon Batch 8, which you can buy on the shelves today at any store, and then 3 really special whiskeys, which were single barrels, of which we picked our Beastmasters Club Private Barrel. So we tasted through 2 of the samples that we did not pick, and then the last whiskey on the list was our choice. So our group here got to kind of go through the barrel selection process, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah, the folks seemed to really enjoy the event. I had a great time. I think Steve and Jim did as well. If you guys would like to purchase the bottle, the barrel that we picked from Barrell Bourbon, it is available on our website, beastmastersclub.com. Go there, check it out, join the club, buy the bottle, and Bob's your uncle. We're good to go.
Yeah. So without further ado, here is Beastmasters Club Episode 2.
Beastmasters Club, experiencing the world's finest whiskey, one bottle at a time.
Calling the first session of the Beastmasters Club to order.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. From me, Ben Triple Matured Paluba, and Steve Smoky Beast Zeller. We want to welcome you all. We hope you're going to have a great time tonight. We just want to give some special thanks before we get rolling. First of all, to Jim Parisi from Xavier Wines. Jim has generously given us the forum for this. Yeah, without Jim, we would not be here. So thank you for everything. We want to thank Joe Beatrice, who's here with us today from Barrell Craft Spirits. Joe has provided the barrel for our first Beastmasters barrel pick from Barrell Bourbon. And we're going to be talking to him this evening. And I think we also want to just give some special thanks to some of our members who were kind of with us in the early inception stages of the Beastmasters Club, who are here tonight. And we're not going to necessarily mention them by name, but we do assign nicknames to people at the Beastmasters Club. So we're going to announce some of the nicknames of the folks who have joined us tonight. So Mrs. Smoky Beast, Steve's wife, has joined us. We have Professor Rickhouse, the Bung Tapper down at the end of the table. Game On. Yeah, all right. Weeders. And we have Sir Pelon, Ilamatic, and 51% Corn, all with us this evening. Otherwise, that's it. Steve, take it from here.
Man. Thanks everybody for coming. We're just so excited, Joe. It's great to have you. I took the liberty of giving Joe a nickname, Joey Big Barrels. I don't know how.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
So welcome. Do you want to just start us off with a little of your story, like kind of what got you into this, and tell us a little bit about Barrell Bourbon?
Sure. I started Barrell Bourbon. Well, first, thanks for coming tonight. It's a little nice rainy night to be here, but it's perfect to be drinking bourbon. My story is I started this company about 5 years ago, and I had this moment where I wanted to open a distillery. And then I did a little bit of research, and I saw that it's sort of a crazy business model. It's a crazy business model, and so if I said to you, I want you to give me $2 million, and in about 6 or 7 years, we may have something. So I said maybe there's a better way to approach this, and so I wanted to first build the brand Barrell Bourbon. So I spent about a year working through the concept and how to approach it, and really understanding them, really diving into the market, and trying to figure out how to translate the passion that I have for whiskey into something that people might like. My background is I had a digital agency that was advertising, web development, application development many years ago, and I had a spirits vertical the whole time, and so I know my way around the spirits market. I've made beer my whole life, and it's just something that I really love. So I wanted to figure out how to put all this together. So what I figured out is that I tasted whiskey from a barrel years ago, and it always stuck with me because I thought, why don't people just drink it like this? Because it is that good. And so that was sort of the first part of it, and then I also knew that people are always looking for new things, and it just coincided with what was going on in the spirits business, and especially in the whiskey market, which was just starting to turn the corner and really grow. So I wanted to be able to create a brand that always had something new to bring to people, and I wanted to do it in a way that was limited edition. So those three things combined with borrowing a little bit from the Scotch merchant whiskey model of buying from different suppliers and putting it together and bottling under your own brand, all came together to establish Barrell Bourbon. And so I go out, I source, I acquire, I taste different things from different distilleries. I put them together, and I actually was telling these guys earlier, I just put together what I like, and we blend to that, and that seems to be working. So we're going to stay with that for a while. So I hope you, I hope you like it. I hope you guys like this tonight.
It's working for us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's so many little brands that will just source some bourbon and put a wacky label on it. Papa Judd's original Kentucky, whatever. So I think many people in the whiskey world love just the transparency of it and the information you give around it. So, tell us a little bit about what goes into choosing a barrel. How does that process work? How does that happen? What do you look for?
It's a very interesting process because there really is no process. I taste a lot of things, and the ones that strike me are the ones that we end up selecting. And then once we actually have the barrels, because you can't taste everything before you buy it. Every single barrel is absolutely different, no matter how tight the production is, and no matter how consistent they try to make the barrels, every one is really truly different. So when I'm putting together a batch, I generally decide among a group. For example, it'd be a group of the 9-year-old barrels. So we'll grab a bunch of those and start doing representative sampling. And then what happens is different things present themselves, different groupings of flavors, and what's there and what's not there, and what's missing, and which one has a better nose and which one has no nose. Which is always surprising to me. You can taste barrels that there's nothing on the nose, but the flavor is incredible. And then grouping them together, and then it's a process of starting to sort it out. This is to make a batch, not for actually selecting a supply barrel. Then it's a question of just starting to put them together until the right combination, and that right combination is so apparent. It's like when you guys selected your barrel, you knew the one you wanted. You just know when that blend is right, and so then we first do it on a small scale and then replicate on a larger scale, but test our way to make sure we get it right, and then that becomes the batch. And that batch, one of the reasons our batch sizes are always different is because we'll use whatever the limiting factor is on the barrel flavor as that determinant. So it could be 500 cases, it could be 1,500 cases, it could be whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's the process. That's the secret. So now you know. Now you can go do it.
Yeah. It seems like there's just nothing to it.
There's nothing to it. You just get the barrel, put it in a bottle, and sell it. It's really that simple.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think we think what you're doing is great, and we really sort of appreciate the sourcing and selecting, and that you're going out there and sort of following your passion to bringing it to other people, sort of letting everybody benefit from the knowledge that you've acquired through sort of your love for whiskey, and being able to go out there and make things that you think people will find interesting. And I think like something that Steve and I have been really into is not having the same old and having new things that are always new, like you were talking about, and like being able to kind of always be discovering new stuff, being able to get things that are a little out of the norm and like non-typical but very good. So, and like Steve was saying, I think a lot of what's out there that is kind of, there's a lot of like stunt whiskey, is almost like what I would call it, a lot of these things where they're like, oh, let's make a weird label and put some stuff in, and it's not, it's just like it's interesting from a marketing perspective, but it's not really quality when you taste it. I feel like a lot of people get disappointed. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it's all about what's in the bottle. And if you look at the bottle, you can see that you can really see the liquid in there. And I wanted a bottle and a package that would really highlight that. So the promise is that it's going to be different, but you can be assured that it's going to be at the same level of quality that the last one was. There's if it doesn't taste good, it won't get there. I had an opportunity to buy some 30-year-old bourbon, and I was really excited about it. It was stupidly expensive, and I got the package, and I opened it up, and not only that, it was the entry date was Halloween, so it was the perfect story. It was like such a great backstory.
30-year-old bourbon.
I was really excited about it. I opened it up, put it in the glass, and it was the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. It was boiled sticks and
Just overwooded.
It was just awful. So as nice as that would have been, it just didn't pass the test. So we passed on it, and that's the way that we've approached it. Yeah.
So I asked Will, one of Joe's employees, for like a funny, embarrassing question, and he said I should ask you for astrological advice. I don't know what that means, but I can't really give you any advice, but I'm just conscious of the way things operate in the universe and try to use that to my advantage. Oh, okay, interesting. So do you consult the stars when you're picking a barrel or when you're looking for?
Much in the way Ronald Reagan did. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
I do check the birth dates. I do. Yep.
Are you like into the whole equinox procession stuff? Is that no? No. Okay.
Okay.
No worries. Blind alley there.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what we're going to drink tonight. So we have your batch 2 of the barrel whiskey. We have your batch 8 of bourbon. You want to just tell us a little bit about those two?
Yeah. So probably the starting point is I'm going to start with something really basic, but I'm sure that you all know this. All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is a bourbon. And what the rules for making bourbon are pretty strict. It has to be made in the United States. The grain bill has to be at least 51% corn. It cannot be distilled higher than 160 proof, and has to go in a new one-time use American oak barrel. Although that's the rule is actually just a new charred oak barrel, and so by default we say American at 125 proof or less, and that's bourbon. The second it hits that wood, it's bourbon. What differentiates the whiskey from the bourbon, when we taste the whiskey first, is the whiskeys. Our whiskeys that we've had to date, and the next couple were aged in used barrels, mainly bourbon barrels. This particular one, so that's bourbon and whiskey. What we're going to taste tonight is our batch 2 whiskey. Batch 2 whiskey was distilled in Indiana, so you can probably figure out where that's from. It was aged in Kentucky, which is a little bit different, a little bit unusual. This was something that a little bit of an experiment for me. I know there's a big mania for a sherry cask finish, and I hadn't really found one that I liked too much. I felt that the whiskey was fighting with the sherry in a lot of cases, where you'd have sherry, and then you'd have whiskey. And so I wanted to do something where it was harmonious, it was integrated. And we found these gigantic sherry butts there from 1939 that were just spectacular. We got a whole bunch of them.
Butts. Sorry, we need a drinking game every time somebody says the word sherry butts. We,
Yeah.
cheers to sherry butts.
Cheers.
I'm glad I could oblige.
You can play along at home.
Yeah.
There you go.
So this was an exercise in trying to make that balanced. So you should. I think it's probably time when you should probably.
So yeah,
take
we're
a
starting
cheers.
from the far left of your little
Whiskey batch
placemat.
2.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Barrel whiskey batch 2. Here we go.
And I'd love to do something a little bit different. I'd like to hear what you guys taste here rather than me tell you what you're going to taste here. So it's a 9-year-old. The mash bill is about 70 corn, 25 rye, maybe a little bit less rye on this one. We found that some of the barrels had more rye in it than others, but it's right around 70, 25, 5, which is mostly what we have in our products. So, anybody?
What's the ABV?
124. 123.8. Yep. Good. Very good. Better than me. I have to apologize. I'm working with so many simultaneous batches that I can no longer keep the proof straight, and they are all high proof. But
So Joe was referencing MGP, which is this big factory distillation plant in Indiana, which makes probably most of the whiskey that you guys drink. A dozen brands you see on the shelf all actually come from here. So
they make a great product, and they make a great product. They really do. They really do.
Some amazing ryes from them.
They do.
Many.
They do.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought we got one barrel. So what are all these different ones?
yeah, let me explain. So we're gonna taste 2 of the standard Barrell Bourbon products that you can find, although they're one batch at a time. So when a new batch will come out soon, and these will be gone. But the first 2 are the Barrell Whiskey and the Barrell Bourbon, which you can buy here at the store. They're currently on the shelves. Then we're gonna go through 3 private barrels, 2 of the ones that we did not pick, and then the one that we did pick. So the final 3 are these 3 single barrels. They're all from Tennessee, right? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. These are all Tennessee bourbon, and I guess since you asked, so when we taste the batch, I think you'll taste a lot of components really brilliantly sort of blended together. Sweet, rich. Wood, all these different things. And then I think what's interesting about the single barrels is you'll sort of taste, not that these barrels were part of this blend, but just in general with drinking single barrels, some of them you'll taste will be very sweet, some of them will be very woody. What we went for in our choice was the very rich, sort of chocolatey, and kind of with some spice and some mint. So you'll get to taste our process when we pick the barrel from Joe, going through the 2 that we didn't pick, and then finally the one that's the Beastmaster's choice.
Yeah, so we've got a little warm up. You guys can sample some of Joe's more typical product, and then we're going to get into our process for picking the barrel that we're offering.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit more of a perspective on the kind of products we have. Yep.
Yeah, just give you a little range of what's possible.
When you blend these, are you sticking to blends from one source, or do you also blend Tennessee with Indiana with that as well?
Yep. To date, everything that we have done has been one source, and for the bourbons, from within a relative close range of production days. And that's how I do the initial grouping. So it might be from the winter of 9 years ago, and I pull all those together, and we start with those. In the case of this whiskey, the whiskey one was actually 2 different years. That was the only time we ever did it, only because that came together as magic, just happened that way. And whiskey 2 is not. That's all. It's all from right around the same production day. Yeah. So you might get some graham cracker. I mean, you can get the wood is really very apparent on this. It comes through nicely. I also get a lot of the vanilla. Yeah. Getting that. Yeah. Getting the baking spices and all those in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little nutmeg, cinnamon style.
It's kind of like like Pop-Tarts. You get like the
Pop-Tarts.
kind of like the baking stuff, the dough on the outside, and then a little bit of that berry kind of jammy stuff. With
Yep.
Sherry.
You do.
I was
Yeah.
going to say some kind of pineapple or citrusy notes almost in there.
Yeah, the citrus note on this one I thought was almost a grapefruit. We try to distinguish between grapefruits and orange in our tasting notes, as you might notice.
Cool.
Yeah,
Tell us about the bourbon batch.
bourbon. This is our Bourbon Batch 8. This was such a to me such a spectacular blend. This one just came together, and it was just magic. This one is roughly the same mash bill. It is a 9.5-year-old bourbon, and it's a pretty high proof. This is 134 proof, right in that range. 134 proof.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
It's up there, and one of the things you'll notice about this one is it doesn't at all drink the way you would think 135 proof product would taste. I mean, it's incredibly delicate on the palate. You don't get any of that alcohol or burn.
Also on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one of the things that really jumps out at me is I think of this as a dusty barrel, as a rickhouse barrel, as a real, you get a real flavor of what a rickhouse smells like when you taste this thing. I don't know how else to describe it. It's I use the word dusty, but that just was what jumps to mind for me.
It has a big sort of chocolatey nose, like a really really nice, like a chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Kind of comes through in there when you smell
Yeah,
it.
you definitely have that cocoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have a real sweet tooth, and I think that comes through. And
Oh yeah, that's great.
I tend to like bourbons that are sweet.
I totally get that rickhouse thing.
Yeah.
You've been in a rickhouse, and it's like the kind of drifting yeast and wood and like all that stuff.
It's-
I didn't think of that, but yeah.
It's a smell that you really, it's unlike anything else. And then as you get into it, each one has its own real flavor, personality, and smell. It's just amazing how that works. We've not done a wheated bourbon yet. I've looked at a lot of them, and I just haven't found one that I like.
That would be cool. Just
Yeah,
saying.
that would be. Oh, it absolutely
People do
would
like
be.
the weeded.
Yeah,
They're big
yeah, yeah.
fans.
Yeah.
They're out there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe in the future we'll have one. We have a lot of things in the pipeline, a lot of projects coming up. Yeah.
What about a rye? Just a straight
Rye. Yep. I've been looking at ryes, and we actually have a young rye that I think is going to be pretty spectacular. That we're going to hang on to a little bit, and yep, maybe next year we'll see. I actually tend to like young ryes. Because I think that there's so much to it. There's so much flavor. There's just it's crisp. It's radical. It's wild. I mean, it's got all those great things. And so we may end up coming out with a young rye
So
next
you
year.
keep a pretty considerable stock of barrels. Like, how many are you guys?
We try to buy as many as we put everything into the company and
Yeah.
just buy as many as we can. And
Like, can I ask how much stock you guys generally keep around? Or?
well, we buy several hundred barrels at a time.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And how long do you age them between? Are you buying stuff that's already aged and releasing it, or do you do a lot of the aging?
Both. Mainly we buy it and let it age longer, but we have a number of products that are lined up and ready to go that can go anytime. So the longer it stays in the barrel, the more interesting it becomes. It just changes. But yeah, we have some that are not going to be used for a while, for a year or two. But others, a lot of the barrels we have can go anytime. It's ready to roll.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we store a lot of our we store most of our product, a lot of it at the Old Taylor, the original Old Taylor distillery, which is now called Castle and Key.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think with the
Yeah.
Big warehouse for everybody, or
They do. We were their first customer. They started their renovation. It's a pretty spectacular place. It's the biggest. Let me see if I get this right. It's the biggest brick house in the United States. and I don't know why I remember, but it's 532 feet long.
It's good to have the details.
Yeah, it's the place is intensely haunted, and but it's just amazing. I've never seen one quite that size.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think the last three we're just going to let everybody taste. Should we take a question or two from the group? Does anybody want to come up and ask a question?
Something they want to ask Joe or ask the group for posterity's sake?
I do.
Yeah, come on up, man.
That's Jeff the mic.
Give him the mic.
Yeah.
Professor Rick House, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey.
Hi.
Howdy, Mr. Roth.
Is my mic
Yeah,
on?
you're ready to go.
Is this thing on?
Yeah. Hello.
Tap.
Long time listener, first time caller. Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, you guys were talking about sort of like the random sort of vanity. There's a lot of crowded shelves out there with sort of like whiskeys come lately, which I typically won't purchase. I have had many bottles of Barrell, which I think is all delicious.
Thank you.
I had a batch one. Actually, whenever I go to my dentist, downstairs is a great liquor store, and I went in there right after I got my teeth cleaned, and the guy's like, "Oh, yeah, you got to try this." So I was like, "Oh, yeah, fantastic!" It was great. So I was like, "Oh, this is great." So I bought several bottles. But how do you sort of get out in the marketplace and differentiate yourself to sort of like, bring awareness to your brand? Obviously, you do tastings and what have you, but sort of how do you sort of differentiate yourself and sort of separate yourself in this sort of crowded marketplace?
That's a really good question, and it's not the easiest thing. I mean, we've done a few things that really are against the conventional way people do it. Starting with a cask strength. Being transparent and doing everything in small batches, and so we've really focused on those points. And we also from the beginning, I've wanted everybody's opinion on what they thought of the whiskey. I wanted to validate it, and so we send our product out to lots of bloggers. And so we do everything with word of mouth. Everything that we have is on social media. We have we use Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to a lesser degree, and we rely on the reviews of the bloggers and getting the word out. We also enter our products when we have them in blind tasting competitions. There's only 2 of those. Everything else to me is just unfair. If you're looking at the bottle that you're rating, I don't know how you really do that fairly. So we only participate in the blind tasting competitions, and we've done extremely well in those, and that's really helped. It's somebody, not me, telling you that it tastes good. So those third-party endorsements, the San Francisco International Spirits is one, and Ultimate Beverage Challenge is the other. I think that those 2. By and large, I agree with most of the ratings that they come up with. I think they're consistent and fair. Whiskey Advocate has been great to us as well. They like the product, and we appreciate that. But it's all been so. Yes, we're out in the market. Yes, we do tastings. We do a couple of the festivals. We're doing Whiskey Fest this year for the first time. I don't know. It's going to be.
Yeah, we've done it. It's a little crazy. Yeah,
it is.
There's a lot of whiskey there, and it's a bit of a shit show.
It's a sea of bald white guys out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what's next on the roster here?
To taste?
Oh, nothing. You have to leave. No. No, I think so. So now, what the last 3 that we have here are the 3 samples that we got from Joe to taste to pick our barrel. So if we're going from left to right, you have the first 2 going from left to right are the ones we didn't choose, and then the last is the pick. So that is the Beastmaster's Barrell Bourbon. So if you guys are tasting through, basically. First is one that we didn't choose, second is one that we didn't choose, and third is the one we chose.
So it's the second runner-up, the first runner-up,
Yes.
and then the winner.
So
Okay.
you'll make your own opinions. For me, the first one is a very sweet kind of corn forward taste, and the second one's got a little more wood. But then the third one, for both me, Ben, Jim, these guys, we all agreed it was kind of the most chocolatey, rich, vanilla, chocolate, spicy one. So
Was just right.
Yeah, we all. Well, vanilla ice cream is just vanilla with chocolate flavoring, so it has a lot of vanilla taste in it.
How dare you, sir? How dare you? Yeah, I mean, I think when we all tasted it, I actually did the pick tasting separately from Steve and from Jim, and they had tasted through and said, "We know what we want. We want you to taste and like make sure that we're in agreement here."
We gave him to Ben without telling him.
Yeah,
Just
they
like,
didn't
here's
tell me
three. We already
anything.
picked one. He
Right.
picked the same one.
So,
Yeah.
but it was so clear to me, and just for all of us, and maybe just we have similar tastes in bourbon. But when I tasted through them, it was like okay. And then I think the one we picked was my second taste. So it was like one that I was like, oh, okay. And then the second one I was like, ooh, that's really nice, and like just big, bold, rich flavors. Really big on, like Steve was saying, a lot like spicy, minty, chocolatey, almost like a hot peppermint chocolate bar, you know. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. If the third one is better than this, I'm going to be shocked. So tasted the third one and was like, nope, it's that. And I called Steve and I was like, this one, and he was like, yeah, that's the one.
You know, that's so funny. What I find is with clubs, it's almost always unanimous when they have a choice. It must be because you all have
club to
similar
club,
from
totally
club
different.
to club. Yeah, it's totally different from club to club.
Tastes,
Yeah,
like different.
Yeah, I'm not surprised
But
by
whenever somebody when they select it, it's almost among the group of people that are selecting it, they almost always pick the same barrel. It's really interesting.
Game on. You got a question?
Well, Joe, first of all, thank you. I'm a big fan of your work. A question about the private barrel selection process. As you know, a big fan of buying private barrels, I sort of want to know if I'm doing something foolish. You've got a bunch of inventory, and you've got blends that have thousands of cases, and you've got single barrels that have 100 bottles. When a club like us approaches you and says, we would like to buy something, are you sending the best barrels that you have, the most interesting barrels you have, the worst barrels you have? How do you strategize?
It's definitely the worst. I mean, we're getting the garbage for sure.
Well, here, what we did here is we sent all the leftovers that we had to you guys. No, I'm only kidding. So the way I approach the barrel tasting or the barrel selection for private barrels is I have a goal in mind of how many private barrels I'm looking for, and so I've already got a baseline of what the group of barrels I'm selecting from tastes like. I have a pretty good sense of how they fall into different categories or different groupings of flavors and what's there and what isn't there, and then I look for variance among the mean there. I can't. There's no other way to really say that. It is a barrel that either has a lot more of something or a lot less of something qualifies. So I do a first cut, and when I get to the number that I'm looking for, I stop, because I don't want to impact the batch that's going to be coming next or out of it in a way that I take all the great barrels out. So I take the first number of barrels when I find the right ones that fit the criteria. I stop at that number. It could be 10, could be 5, could be 20. Depends, but it's only a small subset of the barrels that are there for that batch, that could be there for a batch, and then I taste it again. Then I put it aside and taste it again. Come back to it, and a couple of us will taste it, and then I do some initial notes and rankings and ratings on it, and it very rarely do we go back and disqualify or add one. It's almost always that's the cut. And so then when we put them aside, then to answer your other question about do we favor any groups or anything?
Give us the best.
Yeah, we give the best ones to everybody now. What we do is they are really, we try to give a representative sample of different attributes to everybody, so that you get a few to choose from, and then we will add to that group so that there's always a few to choose from, and we let you pick whatever you like. Sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes the yield can be as low as 15 cases. It's
Right.
you just never know what you're getting. The yield in barrels can be 20 gallons out of 53, or it could be 30 or 32. We've been surprised. We have a batch coming up, batch 9, which it's a 13-year-old bourbon and had a surprisingly high yield, but it was lower proof. which we don't. I should also mention we don't add water to anything. We barely filter it, and we only.
Nicely done.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's why we came to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why
we
you're
love
number
what
one.
you're doing, and that's the whole thing. We want it straight
Don't
from
dilute
the
it.
tap.
Don't
Yeah.
filter it. Just serve it up.
yeah. I mean, if we could, I would just leave some of the dust right in it, but people
Little
think
things
that
floating in there don't
Charge
bother
extra
us.
for
And the bottom.
It's spirits. It's all preserved. Like,
Yeah,
that's
don't
be
nothing.
afraid.
Yeah.
So, love of my life, please come put your voice on our podcast.
There you go.
Thank you. I'll use my radio voice.
Mrs. Smoky Beast.
I think the obsession, I would call it an obsession with whiskey and brown liquor in general has been pretty crazy over the last, I don't know what it is, 5-10 years, or if you want to say it. What's the wave of the future? Like, what are we doing? What's going to happen? What's interesting? I mean, it may be stuff that, we talked about some of this gimmicky stuff. It could be that. It could be, other interesting things that are happening. But what's the wave of the future? And more importantly, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So we can buy it.
That's a great question. I think that there's a wave here with whiskey. And we're somewhere in the believe it or not, in the early stages of I think where it's going to go. I think it's just going to keep going. I think bourbon is going to continue to grow. There may be some fatigue a few years out. I think that you'll see different mash bills. I think you'll see you'll see some finishes on bourbon, although there's been some speculation that finishes on bourbon may be over soon. I'm not sure. That's sort of at the infancy. I'm not sure where that stands right now. I think where the interesting place is going to be is in American whiskeys. I think American whiskey is an interesting category because technically it's a blended whiskey, but blended whiskey also means GNS added to it, grain neutral spirits added to the whiskey. So it's a bad name. It's a bad name in the category, and so that has a lot of hints of I don't want to name any old brands, but the ones that your grandparents drink.
Right.
Chivas and yeah.
Well, or even American.
American.
Yeah.
Does that mean that like Glenlivet has?
No, that's a single malt.
And that's Scottish.
Okay.
We're talking about American whiskey, not Scotch.
Oh,
But any blended whiskey like Johnny Walker, would may have spirit, neutral
Yes,
spirits.
grain neutral spirit.
Yeah.
Yes,
They do.
They can put a little Everclear
No,
in
no,
there.
it's not.
Basically.
It's just.
And by
it's
the
just
way, all
alcohol.
those bottles that my grandparents drank are now like worth $1,000.
They are. They absolutely are. Yeah, go to their house and grab all those bottles.
Find those dusties.
Yeah,
Some dusty
but
digging.
I think that we're playing around with a lot of barrel finishes, all kinds of barrel finishes, and then blending those together. We're even. I don't want to give away too much, but we have a couple coming out that are going to be blending lots of different things together, and I think you might find them really interesting, because you have a lot more latitude with what you can do. So you can really create something that's unique. We have a small batch of rum coming out. It's a Jamaican pot still rum, 7-year-old, 134 or so proof. That is absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, man.
You can. It's very funky.
So, Joe, as someone who tastes things for a living, do you have any input or advice on best way to taste? Is there any technique that you could
Yeah.
opine on?
I'll tell you what I do. I like to taste in the morning when.
Good answer.
Amazing. Yes.
That's right.
I
So
love to
that's-
wake up with a glass of bourbon. It's amazing.
That's how you start
I
your
just
day.
pour a little in my coffee. Gets me going.
Maybe I got that. My grandfather used to start every day with a brandy and 2 raw eggs, and I'm wondering maybe that's where I got it from.
Sounds like
Yeah.
a good start to a
That
day.
is a good start to the day. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. So I like it when my palate is really fresh. I like it in the morning. Also, I will drink a lot of water in between. Sometimes if I'm going to be tasting more than 4 or 5 things, I'll have an apple, a green apple, or coffee grounds. Also are really amazing. They'll neutralize it and kind of set you to zero. And then I nose it. I take a tiny amount initially just to wake up the palate, and then the real tasting comes on the second sip. That's pretty standard the way people taste things. Smell with your mouth open. That kind of thing.
I find that's very true. Like the first sip of whiskey that I ever have in a day, especially like whatever that first, it's like whoa, and I almost like can't really taste anything, and I have to have like a little sip of water and just kind of let it settle in. And then once my tongue is sort of used to the alcohol, then I can really start tasting stuff.
Yeah, because you're getting the alcohol first, and that's the first thing that's happening. The other thing is I find if I have anything that resembles a cold, I don't even bother tasting because it just kills it for me.
Mm-hmm. Just shots then.
Yeah, then it is a shot. Yeah.
Then I just go to the IV.
Yeah.
So the last 3, are they all the same age and they all have the same mash bill?
Yes. They all have the same age. Within a month or 2. They're just about 9.5 years, and they're all the same mash bill. And some of them, there's also a big difference if the barrels were high or low in a rick house. The higher barrels tend to be higher proof, a little bit spicier because they'll lose water rather than alcohol. The lower rick barrels will be a little bit rounder, tend to be a little bit lower proof. They'll lose alcohol generally. So that makes a difference. Sometimes you get these. Sometimes a barrel may be the what people don't realize, I think, is that a rick house has different microclimates even within it. So you could have one that's on one side where it gets more sunlight, or generally sunlight, more heat, and that could be different. There could be a piece of siding missing or a window, and that could be on the barrel. We had a couple barrels that were just that were so different from everything else that we tasted around it. That it was just unusual. And there was no reason for it to be any different except that there had to be something different environmentally about where it was stored. You just see those things.
Well, guys, thank you so much.
I think we have one more question.
Yep.
I was just curious how you got into this business.
Well, you were late, so you missed that part. So.
Penalized.
Does that mean it's already been asked and answered?
No.
Well, I can answer that again.
He did kind of give a little bit. Whole intro.
But
I mean, we went through 10 minutes of that. But, no.
It's okay. Just if everybody doesn't mind listening to it.
We can always edit this out.
Well. Well, it was. I had a whole other business. I was in the service side business. I had a digital agency early on, and I was in the service side for a long time. I had a spirits vertical. I made beer my whole life. I love whiskey, and I wanted to do something different. And the truth is, there was one day when it was. I always had my own business. One day it was just. I realized I couldn't write any more PowerPoint presentations, and so Microsoft. Thank you, Microsoft.
That's whiskey to PowerPoint. What?
That's what did it. Yeah, I know. I almost feel bad sometimes talking about what I do because I have such a great job. I love what I do. Every day is a great day. That's it. I was last summer. I was selecting barrels, and it was a 2-day process. It was really hot in the rick house, and it was really humid, and it was headache time, and a friend of mine called me, and I said, it's really hot and sweaty and I got a headache. And he said, wait a minute, are you complaining about tasting whiskey? And at that moment I realized I got to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing when you can wake up and do what you love every day. It's like, it's not quote work, it's just life. And that's great.
It really is. The product side of this is fascinating. It really is amazing. Bourbon is, one of the things that I find interesting in bourbon is if you get into the history of it, it's the history of America. And also it's really the first open source product. It's really this interesting. It was the collective knowledge of what took place over a couple hundred years. And it still goes on. In Kentucky, there's an incredible community of people who share information. the big guys aside, and they actually do share among themselves, and also with some of the smaller ones. But anybody will talk to you about it, about what they do, and they'll give you advice and insight. And it's a pretty amazing business. It's unlike anything I've seen. And the size of the barrels came out of what worked best, and and just the fact that it was aged in a barrel was because they stuck it in a riverboat that went down to Louisiana, and it tasted better when it got there because it had been in a barrel longer.
Right.
So there you go.
Accidental. I mean, most of the
so
greatest
much.
discoveries of humankind are all weird accidents that people stumbled on and, just happen to be like, well, that's a little better just because I left it outside in the sun or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I want to let everybody talk and drink, so I think we'll stop. I'm going to thank everybody so much except Bunk Tapper, for being patient and quiet and letting us record this podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you to Joe. Big hand
Thank
for
you.
Joe. Awesome. And please come to future events. Let us know what you think. Give us input. Thanks for coming. And we're gonna press stop.
Yeah, we love you guys. Big hug, and thanks for listening if you have been.
Well, that was really fun. I think everybody had a great time. I was particularly happy that our budget USB mic setup did not fail for our first live event.
It's always refreshing to get through it without any technical difficulties.
Any massive calamities. But again, thank you for listening. If you're still with us, thanks to Xavier Wines for hosting. Thanks to Joe Beatrice and Will Schragus from Barrell Bourbon for setting it up and getting us this amazing barrel. Our next event is October 27th, Thursday night, with Joshua Hatton, who's a really interesting guy who runs the annual Whiskey Jubilee in New York and Chicago. He also runs a bottling company called Single Cask Nation, and he's also a representative of Impex, who is Kilhoman's importer. So he was able to get us a really amazing limited run Kilhoman Cask strength bottle. That's going to be awesome. I think there's maybe, 2 or 3 tickets left at the time of this recording.
Not much left. So if you want to attend, get in there now or you're going to lose.
You
lose.
We have not put tickets on sale yet for our November event, which is going to be with Signatory Vintage, one of our favorite independent bottlers. But that will be available shortly. So if you miss out on Kilhoman, go and buy a ticket for that.
Yeah, and also remember, if you're looking to buy the Beastmaster's first private barrel pick, the Barrell Bourbon, 9-year age, definitely check out our website, beastmastersclub.com, available for sale there. And give us some love on social media. We always appreciate it. If you could actually go and review the podcast on iTunes, it helps us a ton. I know, pain in the butt, but it really gives us a big boost. So any little bit helps. Follow us on all the major social channels. You know the name, Beastmasters Club. Make it happen. See ya.
Thanks for listening.